roads safe, and that's for pedestrians, that's for other drivers, and of course for bikers and cyclists. So I know, but I'm here, I'm Councilmember Melissa Fox, and I'm joined here today by a wealth of commissioners who I'd like to take just a moment to introduce. We have Ken Montgomery, who is on the Transportation Commission. We have Chair Carrie O'Malley, who is elected to the Transportation Commission. Okay, and that is Chief.
Ringing endorsement. Yeah.
And Stephen Greenberg, who is here today with us. And now, Stephen, you're on planning?
Transportation.
Transportation, okay.
He's the vice chair.
They keep moving this stuff around. So Steve's our newly elected vice chair. And we're really happy that you guys could be here today because I know, we all know how important this issue is. We have with us also some members of the Irvine Unified School District Board. We have in the back Ira Glasky. And of course Lauren Brooks. And we also have a new committee member with us today, Mark Nugent, who is on the Investment Advisory Board. So I'm really happy to be here today. The most important thing is what we want to talk about from the city and the people who live and use our streets. I asked our lovely police force to come here today. Not only did we get our officers, so I would let you do all the introductions, and of course, Kyle, is that okay? But I would like to introduce our outstanding police chief who is coming here today, Chief Mike Hamel. And our city is dedicated to safety top to bottom, and so we're really happy to be here today. And if you come up, feel free and move up closer. I've injured my knee, so I'm going to be sitting down, and I don't have a ton of stuff to talk about. I'm here to listen, and so is our. So we have a presentation from our officers, and I will let them get started. Now, I was supposed to bring a laptop, and I didn't realize that, so I'll apologize, but I know our officers are ready to wing it and ready for everything, so I'll let you come on and take over. And then please, do you want to do a format where people can ask questions or talk, or do you want to just do a presentation
I
first?
prefer this to be a two-way conversation.
Okay, well why don't you just do an introduction, and then we'll see if we can open the floor.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Fox, for inviting us here this afternoon to speak to all of you about a very important topic, traffic safety, that we obviously take very seriously. My name is Kyle Turner. I'm the lieutenant in the Traffic Bureau. Been there about 6 months. Been in our Traffic Bureau about 6 months. Been with the police department about 15 years now. To my left is Officer Bo Kim. He is a motor officer for the department, and he actually works the area of the city that we call Portola, that includes Woodbury. So he is an area expert if you have any questions for him as well. And then Officer Jason Schaefer, he is our newest motorcycle officer. Just completed training about a month ago, but he's also been with the department about 15 years. So a good amount of experience here this afternoon to answer hopefully any and all questions that you might have. But I wanted to take just a few minutes to share with all of you just some information. What does the police department do? What are we focused on? And what do we do on a daily basis to work towards traffic safety in the community? And so what I wanted to start with is the traffic safety philosophy that we have within our Traffic Bureau. If you were to see any motorcycle officer on the street and you were to ask them what are the 3 E's for traffic safety, does anybody know? Has anybody heard of the 3 E's? Just out of curiosity. No? I didn't either before I was a police officer. Engineering, absolutely. Transportation. What's that? Well, that certainly applies. It certainly applies. What's that? Engage. Education, absolutely. Enforcement. Bill's got it. So education, enforcement, and engineering are the 3 E's of traffic safety. And it's what we focus on in our Traffic Bureau to try to bring that safety and bring that message to the community. So it starts with a partnership with Irvine Schools. We are in our schools, both our school resource officers, we have a middle school officer, and our DARE officers are in the schools on a daily basis. And one of the topics that they teach about is traffic safety. We want to make sure the kids are empowered, so when they are walking to school, riding their bikes in the community, whatever the case may be, they are empowered to ensure that they are safe in the community. And empowerment means knowing what to look for, how to cross the street appropriately, making sure you're making eye contact with drivers before you enter the crosswalk, etc. So we really want to empower our kids and our youth at the school level in order to keep them safe. And that is an ongoing project, and actually I'm going to talk about something in just a minute that I'm excited to announce. I'm only going to be able to share just a small part of it, but about some additional things that are going to be coming shortly. Has any of you heard about Traffic Talk? So if you're following our Facebook page or any of our social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, etc., we do a lot of Traffic Talk posts. And the Traffic Talk posts are just educational, informational type posts that hopefully provide some tips, reminders to the community about traffic safety, so we can keep it, front of mind in a sense, so that people are aware of that and they're thinking about it on a daily basis. But those Traffic Talk tips can simply be a photo with a reminder, or it could be a pretty in-depth video. In fact, one video coming up, if you are not following our social media pages, I should say, either our Facebook page, Twitter, etc. One video that's coming up, I'm just going to be probably releasing that Monday, maybe Tuesday, is about roundabouts. Roundabouts are a pretty significant, I don't want to say issue. I see somebody smiling in the back. But when you don't drive through them on a daily basis, there's three challenges to roundabouts. One, driving through. How do you walk through? How do you cross? And then how do you get your bike through? And then as a driver, being aware of all those things as well. They're building more and more roundabouts out in the east end of the city, in the Beacon Park area, and we want to make sure people are aware of that. So there's going to be a video coming out. And that is done by our very own Tim Knight, who does an outstanding job on all of our videos. You may have seen another video of ours on distracted driving with cell phones. A very powerful video, I like to think so, that really emphasizes the importance of not looking at your cell phones while driving. So education, so videos, social media posts, in the schools as often as we possibly can. Doing these kinds of community meetings. In fact, we were just at Beacon Park this last week with the community meeting. Our area traffic officer was there, Brian Smith, doing the similar presentation that I'm doing today. So that's what we're making efforts to do. Some of our new educational programs that I hinted about earlier is we have a bike safety class that we do on Saturdays. In fact, Officer Kim over here is a big part of that. We do that on Saturdays, so if your son or daughter, who's younger than 18, gets a citation for some sort of traffic violation, either, I believe it's only if you're driving, or walking or riding, is that correct?
Riding a bicycle or a scooter.
Riding a bicycle, scooter, etc. If one of our officers were to issue them a citation, it's actually not a normal traffic citation that you got to go to traffic court for. It is an administrative citation which would require you and your parent to appear on a Saturday, unfortunately, for a couple hours to learn traffic safety tips, how to get through the community more effectively. Yes?
Question for you. When you're talking about the citation with the bikes and the scooters, are you also citing them because aren't we supposed to be wearing helmets now?
Oh, absolutely.
Trust me, I've seen some without helmets.
Or wearing a helmet without
we all
a
have-
strap, without
We're not buckling it, yes.
Yes.
Which is a big concern.
And I call
Absolutely.
people out.
I'm good at that too.
It's a law if you're under 18, your
Yeah.
child has to protect their
Right.
end.
And if it's not strapped, it's
Especially
not
with the way
going
drivers are
to
around here.
Yeah.
anything. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. No, that is something that is included in that.
I tell kids it's just a silly hat. It doesn't have the buckle.
It is. It's a silly hat that's going to do
But
absolutely
it's
nothing. It's going to go flying if you get
Not
knocked
with the
off your
buckle.
bike.
Yeah.
You have to buckle them too.
But we also-
Oh,
Yes.
I make sure that.
And on that note, we do some positive reinforcement as well. For example, 7-Eleven, we partner with 7-Eleven during the summer months traditionally, and we pass out coupons for free ices at 7-Eleven if they are wearing their helmet or if we see them doing something positive when it comes to traffic safety. So we try to balance that. We don't just want to, do the enforcement side without doing the reinforcement side, the positive reinforcement. So the weekend traffic and bike safety class that I mentioned, we just decided about a month and a half ago, Officer Kim and his partner have been working on this to expand that to not only kids that receive citations, but any kid that wants to go. And then we're going to make it add to the format a skills class, a bike skills class, similar to the bike rodeo that we do in the schools, but a bike skills class that kids can come to on their Saturday. We'll have the parking lot set up with cones or some sort of patterns that they can ride through. They can learn traffic skills, traffic safety skills, and they can go out in the parking lot and they can perform or practice those traffic safety skills and do it in a fun environment. And that'll be for different age ranges. And we're going to break it up and make sure that it's age appropriate depending on the age of the child. Yes?
Can you guys incorporate children that are pedestrians? Just
Sure.
yesterday,
Oh, absolutely.
a second grader, I was already in the middle of the intersection on Rush Lily and Roosevelt, looking at her phone, walked right into the street, did not look in any direction. Thank goodness I saw her. So with so many young children in elementary having phones,
Absolutely.
they don't even know how to cross the street appropriately and look for motor vehicles.
Yeah.
What a great idea.
Yeah, I love that.
I think pedestrians is most important because we have such a problem with people blowing through stop signs and,
Sure.
I mean, not even stopping and giving pedestrians the right of way.
Lieutenant, do we have anything in our bike rodeos that train pedestrians?
I'm saying for Officer.
Walking
So I can answer
safety.
that question. In the bicycle safety class that Lieutenant Turner was speaking of, we definitely mentioned a lot of laws that apply to pedestrians, safety of pedestrians, and paying attention to cars in the roadway whenever even possible, or even on a sidewalk. We should not be on our cell phones.
They are.
Unfortunately, it's not against the law to be on your cell phone and walking at the same time. However, it's not a smart idea, right? So we definitely include that, and in the new program that Lieutenant Turner was speaking of, we will definitely emphasize the pedestrian safety and cell phone.
That would be great, because the drivers don't watch, they don't pay attention, and they're constantly blowing through stop signs or doing California rolls. I mean, I just had an incident that happened to me yesterday within a minute period. My daughter was on her bike, one car blew through the stop sign, I was at the corner. The other car, I was already in the street with my daughter, the other car saw me, made eye contact, and then put the pedal to the metal and just blew through. And I threw my hands up at her really, she was just feet away from hitting me and my daughter. And it's just such a big problem. And kids are just not aware of their surroundings and aren't paying attention when they're stepping out in the street. So we have to really emphasize to protect our kids.
Absolutely. We absolutely agree. We absolutely agree. And we're doing our best to bring that emphasis, not only to the schools through our SROs, their program, but also through our traffic.
Perfect.
Yes.
When she was talking about the school, that Rush Lily area seems to be the worst lately. I keep hearing about people, and I mean, my daughter was
Constantly
in fifth grade there.
weekly.
It's been 20 years,
I've taken
yeah.
so many pictures, so many videos, I mean, and it does no good. When
Yeah.
I'm walking to and from
Where
school.
Cypress Village is, I mean, when I got her in there, it just opened, so the traffic wasn't as bad. But when she got there in sixth grade, she's now in high school at Northwood. But it's what exactly you're saying. Parents who just do the U-turn, which you're not supposed to. I was always a good parent going in, going around, and it just seems like with Cypress Village growing, it's got worse.
Yeah. And we're seeing that in lots of parts
Yeah.
of the city. It's a developing, changing city, and we're trying to adapt
And
just
what
as
I
well
mean-
as the residents are
I
trying
know
to
you have to
adapt.
be in other places, but if they could try to get some police over there or something, maybe.
Well, we have Access Irvine now, right? So can
Yes.
people update hotspots right from their phone?
What is that?
Access Irvine is a new application that we just recently updated with the city.
Yes.
It's a phone app, and you can report, and I encourage you to report areas of where you're seeing flagrant abuse of traffic laws.
Running stop signs, U-turns.
Every school in the
going-
city.
I mean, I've never seen, I've been an Irvine resident for 18 years, I've never seen in this community in Cypress Village more of a disregard for the signs and the laws and disrespect to pedestrians.
Yeah.
I've been there 4 years. I mean, the most.
I'm a resident of
ridiculous.
Portola Springs, and so
Yeah.
I see it also in Cypress
I don't
Village
get
and
it.
Woodbury.
I don't get it. It's like the signs are obviously there for a reason, and weekly there's incidences.
We had, I don't mean to take you off your program.
No, it's
We,
okay.
we did
That's okay.
have,
No, this is
Lieutenant
totally fine.
Hurtado had run a high visibility enforcement, and we were very successful in getting people to comply with the laws, but then as soon as we let up and looked at other areas of the city, it all came back again. So I know we've once again restarted high visibility enforcement in our area.
Well, not only have we restarted those, we've been doing those, like you said, since Lieutenant Hurtado, who's actually now Commander Hurtado, was in the traffic bureau, which was about a year and a half ago. But we've tried to emphasize the publicity of those high visibility enforcement campaigns, again, on social media and other avenues such as Nextdoor. Mainly, again, just to get the word out. It's just a reminder of, hey, slow down, drive safely. Yes.
No disrespect, I don't want to sound racist out here, but we are a multicultural city, and sometimes, I mean, there are a lot of cultures that they were born in the United States, so they know the laws, but I'm talking when they come from another country and you have the speed, or even sometimes another state where you have an unlimited speed limit. I think that's where some of the problem lies too.
Sure, and you may have, and you know, along those lines, you may have received a door hanger on your door recently. What was it, last Saturday, I believe it was, a week ago today, in which our community emergency response team went door to door in the neighborhoods to translate information on everybody's door, to make contact with people. And it was done in several languages just to, again, influence traffic laws. We try to pick certain laws that often have some confusion just across the board, so that we can highlight those. And again, a reminder, I think the more that people see this, hopefully the more their awareness and attention is drawn to it. And then they realize their own traffic behavior. Because how many times have you come to a stop sign, sorry, just 1 second, and you think you stopped, but you probably didn't, and you rolled through. Because you feel the little jerk of your car, and it feels like a stop, and then you're gone through. And it happens all the time. I bet these officers can attest to how many people they've stopped for rolling a stop sign. And they swear up and down, I stopped at that stop sign. It felt like you stopped, but you didn't stop. So just having that awareness of your own driving behavior. Yes, sir.
Just a question about those high visibility, events that you have.
Yes.
How is that selected where you end up? Because I'm wondering if you kind of make the rounds in all the villages. You know what I mean? Like, because I see them happening, but some of the things that we're hearing about now, I mean, especially the school drop-offs and pickups, I mean, it's a nightmare where we develop or those. So I'm just wondering how that works.
Sure.
Is there a rotation?
And I'm glad you mentioned schools, because again, that is a big focus for us, not just with the officers that are in the schools, but also around the schools. In fact, recently, a couple weeks ago, we divided up all the schools in the city of Irvine and assigned each officer in the traffic bureau to a school specifically, so that they can create ownership of that school, they can show more presence at that school. So each officer in the bureau will probably have between 2 and 3 schools each, but they will be there on a daily basis, just for that visual reminder for drivers. Because I think, as we all know, including myself, when I see an officer outside of my kid's school, I slow down a little bit and I drive a little safer. Not that we're all unsafe drivers, but again, it's just that awareness of your driving behavior. You're less focused on, I'm late for this, and you're more focused on the here and now and driving safely through the road. So I hope that partly answered your question, but the other part of that, I think, was how do we select it?
Right.
And so there's a variety of processes. So our area traffic officers, and I'd love to be able to introduce you to yours. His name is Brian Smith. He could not be here today. He had a new addition to his family recently. He's very excited. But what's that?
Said he's excused.
Okay. But he was at the Beacon Park meeting this last week, and I'm sure he will be at meetings in the future. He does an outstanding job of monitoring traffic concerns in the area. And I was going to provide you all with his email address, with his phone number. If you guys have a pen or want to take that down, I'd be happy to share that with you. Because the area traffic officers are what I like to consider sort of the quarterbacks for some of the traffic concerns in the community. So they take all that information in and they help to organize on certain days of the week different enforcement efforts because they are most aware of the community concerns because they are the ones having direct contact with people like yourselves that might have concerns in their neighborhood. So his email address, very, very easy to remember, B for Brian, B Smith at cityofirvine.org. And if this is being recorded, hopefully we can refer back to it, or other people will see that as well. So B Smith at cityofirvine.org. And he reviews all those emails. All 3 of our area traffic officers do, 1 for each area of the city. They review all those emails and they coordinate, okay, we're getting a lot of issues in this area. It's more like an intelligence-based policing effort, if you want to call it that, but for traffic. So not necessarily for crime, but for traffic specifically. And they will put 6, 7, 8, 10 sometimes officers in one area to do heavy enforcement in those areas. Just in an effort, again, to bring awareness. Because I think studies will show, and Ken, you might know this, or I've heard of this too, because I know you've done your research, that studies will show that when officers are in an area, the effect of that officer being in that area lasts about 2 weeks, give or take. Maybe even up to 3 in certain instances. You haven't heard that?
No.
Okay. It lasts about 2 weeks. People know, oh, there was an officer here a week ago. I'm still going to drive careful just in case they're still around. And know that even though we might pick one long stretch of streets, such as Sand Canyon between the 5 and Portola, or Ridge Valley, which is another hotspot for us, or streets within Woodbury, know that although we might pick that for our high visibility enforcement that day, officers are still in the area throughout the week. So just because you don't see 10 officers anymore, there's still going to be 2 or 3 usually in the area doing the same enforcement. So don't feel like, oh well, their HPD's over here today, so we can, people know that they can drive crazy through this part of the city on that particular day because there's still officers around. Yes.
There's door hangers. There's less positive response on social media for that.
Good.
Is there plans to roll that out to other villages? I think there was 2 test villages.
Yes, it was in Quail Hill and Woodbury, and we're going to be doing it again.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the chief has instructed us to continue with those in the future.
Also, doubling back to the school and the bicycle safety, is there a licensing process for bicycles right now?
Yes, so there is a licensing process. It can be done through the front desk. And shortly, when I say shortly, I'm hoping 1 to 2 months. But there are some technical, computer type IT issues that we're working through. You'll be able to do that online.
Okay.
Where you could go online, take a picture of your serial number and your bike, submit it that way, and you'll be able to register your bike.
Would the training be a part of the licensing process? Because that's how it was for me as a kid.
Sure. If it's online, no. But we do, like I was mentioning earlier, we do offer other avenues for training, like the Saturday classes, and then another program that we're going to be bringing to the schools, hopefully within the next 3 or 4 weeks, will also be starting, and that's just another opportunity. I think our kids get, between what we do in the Traffic Bureau, between what officers, school resource officers, dare officers, etc., do with their programs, they're going to be getting quite a bit of instruction on traffic safety.
This lady was first.
I see hands everywhere.
This lady was first.
My concern is the people that are committing all these crimes and are the problem are not here. They're never here.
Yeah.
They're part of the problem and they're not doing anything to fix the problem. How
Sure.
do we communicate this to
Sure.
them? And I think we need to make sure that there's an outreach in multiple languages, whether it be Chinese, Korean, Indian languages, or Russian, whatever
Sure.
it might be. We need to make sure that the point is getting across, because I feel like we're talking about this, but they're not even aware, and they think they're doing absolutely nothing wrong, and the
Sure.
law is above them.
So we're taking strides, I'd say big strides, to communicate to a variety of people in their home language. And you can imagine some of the difficulty in that. For example, if you were to go on Google Translate and type something in and see what comes out the other side, it's not always the same.
Yeah.
It's not always the same. And sometimes it's communicating a completely different message than what you're hoping. So we're not using Google Translate, as you can imagine. We're going to resources within our department, within City Hall, to do our best to translate those things into a variety of languages, and then reach them on their own platforms. A lot of people in the community aren't on Facebook. A lot of people are not on Nextdoor. A lot of people aren't on Twitter. I don't even have a Twitter account. I don't know about all of you. Some are on Instagram. So we're trying to reach across platforms, but then if you look within cultures, they have their own platforms as well. And so we're making efforts to get into those platforms, identify what they are, and get into those platforms so we can continue that education.
Can you do it with the school? So whatever your message you have, it
So-
sends to the principal,
Yes.
and the principal distributes it, because that's where a lot of the problems lie.
So the program that's in development right now, it's one that was developed by our middle school officer, Rick Raymer. I don't know if you
Yes,
know his
he
name.
just got promoted though recently.
He
so
did.
He's not a
He
general
did.
trail
So
anymore.
Sean Cronin is taking his place, and
He's
Sean
great,
Cronin. And do you guys all know Officer Predney, Mike Predney?
Yep.
He's about
No.
8 feet tall, I think, maybe, give or take. He was a dare officer, and probably one of the most popular dare officers we've ever had. We would have dare basketball games, police versus fire, and about 200 kids would show up just to see Mike Predney play basketball. So we are trying to get him back in the schools now, since he's a motorcycle officer, and do traffic safety stuff. And the program that we are developing is really a community-based program, where it's not police officers standing there on the side of the street encouraging safe driving. It's partly that, don't get me wrong, that's part of it. But the other component is getting parents and families involved and really taking ownership of the program. You would get something to place on your windshield saying, hey, I'm a part of this. You get handouts to say, for educational purposes. Your kids will get reinforcement when they receive a ticket, or a ticket, when I say a ticket, that's probably the wrong word for a traffic lieutenant to say. They will get a little voucher or some sort of raffle ticket when they do something positive. They're wearing their helmet on the way to school. Hey, great job, here you go. And then those all lead up to, and this is where we're trying to work out some of the details, those all lead up to either a pizza party or some sort of recognition for just the outstanding work. And again, bringing that awareness. So now, hopefully, the hope is, you have kids inside parents' cars saying, "Mom, slow down," or "Dad, slow down, because I want to get a raffle ticket. I want to, help my class win the prize," or whatever the case may be. And again, it's just all-encompassing. It's hitting everybody on all sides of it. So it's not, again, officers standing in the streets issuing citations, because I think that really only has so much of an effect. I think it has a powerful effect. Don't get me wrong. I still, to this day, if a police officer pulls me over, my heart still races. But I think that happens to a lot of us. But it's still, we want to see a positive side to those interactions instead of just an enforcement side. We're still doing enforcement, but we like to balance it. Yes.
Speaking of kids, I mean, not just at school, but when they're walking to school. I lived in Woodbury for 13 years. I just moved from there. But over by Court, and I've been gone for a month from Woodbury, so correct, just tell me if it's been done. There's that one pedestrian walk from Court. It has no stop sign, and at night no lights. And kids in the morning are walking over to Woodbury, and I've seen people speeding through Woodbury and everything.
Sure. I don't know the exact location that you're referring to. I don't know if Officer
It's on Peyton. It's right up there at Peyton, right there where Woodbury Court is.
That's a great thing to report to Access Irvine.
Okay.
It is. So let me talk a little bit about Access Irvine. So we have had this app for a little while, but it's gotten refreshed. In fact, it went offline for a little while because we were having some technical difficulties while we brought it back. And the Access Irvine app really has a lot of information about the city, about city events. But it also has an opportunity for you to report, I don't want to call it a crime, but report something.
Everything. I report broken sprinklers.
Violation?
I report broken
sprinkler?
dangerous conditions.
Yes.
I report everything to
And
that.
for which
Access Irvine is the name of the app. It's on iOS as well as Android.
Okay.
And so when you report that, it goes straight to the right department.
Okay.
Now, if you report a police issue, it goes straight to our dispatchers, and they'll do one of two things. They'll either dispatch an officer out to the location to handle it, or they will email it to the appropriate department. If it's not something, like for example, we get this car's parked in front of a fire hydrant. Please come out and cite it, because this guy does it all the time, or whoever. And so we'll go out there and evaluate and issue a citation if appropriate. But then there's other things, like, hey, my neighbor, I think he's up to no good, whatever that may be. And again, if that's something that needs a detective to follow up, then it goes to the detective bureau, then it's through a sergeant, and it's routed to the appropriate detective to follow up. So there's a variety of avenues that you can use that app for, not just for information, but also for reporting.
It's also good for city stuff. So if you find like a dangerous tree or a tree that needs trimming, or so it's not anything in the city that you want to report to public works or to police or to administration, use the app.
And then there's, go ahead.
And then feel free to email me.
Yeah, it's very easy, but when you're reporting a driving issue, you go to crime tip?
Yes, crime tip, yes. And that's a good point. What's that?
It's a report when you stop and pull over.
Please stop when you pull over. And not when you're stopped at a red light either, because you still can't touch your phone. Even when you're stopped at a red light, there's some confusion about that sometimes. But yes, so crime tip would be the correct thing to go to for that. Yes. Yes, sir.
What's the law? People are confused about this. Let's say you're making a left turn on Culver, from Scottsdale, and there's students that are crossing. Do you have to wait until they're completely on the other side to make the turn? I know there's a difference between when students are crossing and when other pedestrians are crossing. Where's the law?
Between students and other pedestrians?
Yeah.
I believe they're all treated the same. I can refer to my resident experts over here if you guys like to answer that question.
So the question was, when students are crossing a crosswalk,
How long do you have to wait?
Do you have to wait till they're
you're trying to ask the driver of the car?
Yes.
So the law is very ambiguous, I'm going to be honest with you regarding that, okay? Generally, what I like to see is half the pedestrians get at least halfway through the intersection. Halfway generally is the race center divider. We have them all over the city. And if they're at least halfway and walking away, I think that's safe.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Officer Kim, but it just says a safe distance, correct?
Yes.
They need to be a safe distance away from you. So it is subject to interpretation, but like you said, if they get halfway across the street on the other side of the raised center divider, usually that's considered a safe distance. They can't trip and fall backwards or forwards into your car, and that should be considered safe.
But there's no difference between students and pedestrians.
No difference. No difference. Yes, ma'am.
So, and I appreciate all the comments, but John mentioned a comment about pickup and drop off in particular at some of the schools. And
Yes.
as transportation commissioners, we just had an item come to us about a month ago regarding Vista Verde Elementary School, K-8 school, with some crosswalk issues at that elementary school. And I've met personally with the mother who had a son. Thank goodness he's going to be okay, but over at Canyon View Elementary. And so from that item, I know I put on director's comments and we came to agreement as a commission that that crosswalk will remain intact and really patrolled by officers, so thank you.
Sure.
But we also are bringing back another item in 90 days for city staff to take a look and analyze the other schools in Irvine and make
Yeah.
sure that all the crosswalks are safe,
Yes.
that that they're in sight, plain sight, that there's enforcement. So we're looking forward to putting that item on our agenda, and
Yes.
we can let you know when that's.
Yeah, that'll be a comprehensive study by staff
Absolutely.
to see, all right, what are we
What we
doing?
can do,
Right,
exactly.
what more can be done, right?
So that's about 90 days from.
Yes,
from
and I
last
believe our
week.
traffic engineering staff are taking the lead on that.
Thank you.
Jamie Bourgeois,
Yep.
if you don't know her, she is our traffic safety. I know you guys are very familiar.
Yeah, we love her. She's the best traffic
She is.
engineer I've ever seen.
She's great. And Tran that works with her.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Great guy.
Fantastic.
So,
Mr. Lasky.
there's a good point, because I want to stress when you mentioned a second ago. It is an intersection where there is a crossing guard. The crossing guard has to be completely out of the crosswalk, even if it's on the other side from you, as when we clarify. It's stopped until the crossing guard actually gets back on the curve, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking the question.
Did everybody catch that?
Could you repeat that?
Sure. If there is a crossing guard in a crosswalk with their sign out, regardless of where that crossing guard is within the crosswalk, you do have to stop and wait. So once the crossing guard gets all the way back to the sidewalk, then you can pass through, not before. So it's slightly different than if it's just regular pedestrians.
Okay.
Just wanna say
Good
that.
point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one more question.
Sure.
I've noticed that we've had, particularly on Ridge Valley, signs that tell people their speed. And is that something that's helpful, letting people know, hey, you're speeding?
Absolutely.
It's dangerous.
Again, it's one of those where you're aware of your own driving behavior, where cars today, you can go 70 and it feels like you're going 40. And so those signs are just a reminder. And I don't know if are you referring to the speed trailers?
Yes.
Or the actual signs on poles?
I can't remember. I just
Both.
wanted to tell you where you're driving.
There's currently none of
Do
those.
they take pictures?
They do not.
They
Not
should.
yet.
So
Not
California
enforced.
law- California law doesn't allow that. Does not allow that. So
Unfortunately.
if we are not present, the only exception
Or warnings.
is the red light cameras at intersections, which we don't have in the city. But
That's
the
right,
only
city doesn't have them.
They're unconstitutional.
yes, they've
LA
been,
has them everywhere.
Yeah, but they're not enforceable.
Yeah.
so
Oh.
there's issues with them. To say the least. There's
I used to
issues.
work for a company that invested in red lights, and they're not enforceable.
And one other thing about those message board trailers, we have a handful as a police department. I know our public works department has quite a few of them as well, and we try to move them to various parts of the city where there's traffic issues. And again, so you're aware of your traffic behavior. We're getting a new one shortly. In fact, we have grant funds for another radar/message board trailer. This one will be a little bit different. I don't know if you've ever seen the ones that when you're going a little over the speed limit, not that I want to admit to that, but it happens once in a while. If you're going a little over the speed limit, the light flashes at you as it says your speed.
Oh, that's
That
nice.
almost gets you a little bit more like, oh man, like it's taking a picture or something of you. So the one that we're getting should have that capability to give you that extra visual feedback. Yes.
Is there a way to do like speed bumps around schools, or even in crosswalks, do those big bumpy things, or have a sign that like there's a pedestrian crossing? Because Roosevelt, people go flying down that street and blow through the stop sign consistently.
So yes, there is.
That's a city
There's a
thing.
way, and it's possible. However, I wouldn't want to. So similar to your question about the intersection down the street, A lot of those questions are traffic engineering questions. And that's kind of the beauty of our police department, I would say, is that we are communicating with traffic engineering. We meet with Jamie and Tran every single week to discuss a variety of traffic issues throughout the city, including safety around schools. That's always a big topic. So when we have an intersection that we see as a problem, we will bring it to their attention. They will go out and evaluate. But when it comes to speed bumps, when it comes to flashing lights and signals and those kinds of things, or hey, we need a stop sign here so that it slows traffic down, that is up to traffic engineering. So we usually report back to them and they do their evaluation.
And I can answer that one. I've been online a lot about traffic, and overwhelmingly the request from the public has been for flashing signs in certain areas. And I think we're going through the budget process right now in the city, and we've had a hole in our budget 2 years in a row. This is going to be our first cycle where we have a fully balanced budget without having to pull one-time funds. That said, we're looking at where we can, where we need to trim and where we can add. And I know that safety is a huge priority in our city. And one of the things I would like to look at are adding additional pedestrian and bicycle safety measures, such as flashing signs. But I know when we had a, right, and so, but that's Public Works. And we would do that, of course, in conjunction with the Traffic Commission, Transportation Commission, not the Traffic Commission. Transportation Commission, the commissioners we have here tonight, as well as our Public Works staff. And we're very lucky that Ken Montgomery is a former Public Works director from city staff, and he's volunteering. All of our commissioners and our committee member, and Don Antis, who's also on Child Care Committee, I forgot to mention, they all volunteer their time for the city. So they're going to be looking at that. I know I'm going to ask my commissioner to look at that specific issue of flashing signs because it seems very, very popular.
I mean, I've been in Cypress Village for 4 years. I can't tell you how many times I've nearly been run over, or so many instances, and things happen on a weekly basis. And it's like, yesterday I posted to the Cypress Village Facebook group, because I had enough. Like, after the person blowing through the stop sign, and then within a minute, the other person nearly, hitting us with my daughter on her bike. Like, this is ridiculous.
And I was letting the lieutenant know, I've seen a number of reports through Nextdoor of unreported hit and runs and actual altercations where children are being hit, but they're okay, or the individual is gone, so the parents don't report it. So I think we need to really let people know that if this is happening, you have to report it. It's a hit and run, it's a crime, and it'll also help with our enforcement.
It will help with our enforcement because it brings our awareness and attention to those kinds of issues. So I can give you our dispatch number, you can call them directly, they can have an officer respond as quick as they're available and take that report. We encourage you to do so, absolutely. Yes, sir.
What's the current motor officer shift? How late are they on duty?
Those are industry secrets.
The concern is that I've heard and complained about this topic for years in general, not about does a great job with traffic safety. I've heard it's 6 p.m.
So ours is currently 7 p.m.
Everybody, I'm sorry.
Ours is 7 p.m.
Okay.
Yes.
So everybody gets home, and then everybody has dinner, and then if you walk around this park at nighttime, literally sometimes hundreds of people walking around throughout the community,
Sure.
and there's zero presence.
Yeah.
So it's highly encouraged, I know we emailed about it a couple times to folks in the room, and we highly encourage people being out a little bit later.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. Yes.
Yeah, when, as you remember, it's been almost 3.5 years now since that little boy died over there on the bike.
Yes.
When when a bunch of us went over to the city council meeting right after it, like the Tuesday after it happened, we were told on Roosevelt, you can't have speed bumps because emergency vehicles that have to go through, like if there's a fire or something like that, if it's a main drag, they were told you couldn't do speed bumps.
So that is certainly one of the considerations.
Right.
In fact, I was talking to Mr. Tran, the traffic engineer, recently about speed bumps. Somebody else was requesting them in our particular neighborhood. And that is certainly a concern. It does slow down the ingress of emergency vehicles, or the egress if you're in an ambulance and you get to the hospital, it slows you down. And there's a number of other concerns. I can't say that's the only one. And I don't want to speak on behalf of traffic engineering because they're the experts, but I know there's a number of other concerns that they have as well. And they'll look at it on a case-by-case basis. And if there's a strong push from the community, I would imagine there's always the potential for speed bumps being put in. But
Well,
at the same
we
time,
look at lighting, we look
Sure.
at trimming the bushes, making sure that it's not an overgrown, that there's good sight lines. So and also a flashing indicator. So there are things that we could do that would increase the safety, but we have great traffic engineers. So if we can identify an intersection, we can bring all of our departments to look at it.
What is about rush loading?
yes, sir, in the back.
All these issues seem to be based around the care of children, but would it be more effective if people took responsibility of making sure that children weren't in the streets? Because I was never hit by a car, and I think anybody that randomly gets hit by a car, they want me to sit across the street. I'm not saying people should drive by whatever they want, but I think a lot of these issues would be better off people parenting their children better than wasting government money on speed bumps and other things. And I think signs are a good way, but people already know what speed issue.
Yeah.
Well, the parents aren't with the kids when they're
It's
riding
the
their
grandparents
bikes.
that are raising the children, and the parents are working in dual income households.
And I grew up on my own, like my mom, when I got work, I walked to and from school,
Sure.
and not in a nice neighborhood like
Yeah.
Irvine. And I was never ran over by a car. I knew not to go on the street. I knew that at the age of like 5. I was like some kid walking around, couldn't, think for myself. You shouldn't be in the street. And that's a parenting thing. A lot of these things are personal responsibility things, not government or city level responsibility things.
As a police department who's representing the community, we have to look at it from a variety of perspectives. When I was, what grade was I in? Fourth grade? Third, fourth grade? I walked back and forth to school. I see what you're saying. There was a girl. I was never hit by a car, but there was a girl at my school on her bike hit by a car and killed. So you have to think about, okay, when you say wasting taxpayers' dollars, if it saves a life, is it really a waste? And maybe you were fine, and maybe you had some lucky, or maybe even close calls. Whereas 99% of the people in the city have probably never been hit by a car. But there is a 1% who were unfortunate enough to be in that particular situation. And as a police department, when we're approaching problems within the community, we have to look at it from a variety of perspectives. We see your perspective, but we also see the perspective of parents who are nervous because they do have to go to work in the morning and their kids do have to work or walk to school or ride their bike. And we want to make sure that everybody's protected. We don't just focus on kids. There's a lot of programs that we do for communities and adults as well. And so we try to take all different angles to approach the problem itself and hopefully find a resolution that works for everybody.
No, we're talking about kids because kids have been run over, but
Kevin, 4 years ago,
Yeah.
November.
Yeah, that's the one I was
My
thinking.
son's science lab partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, my son was hit a month ago when someone who's driving too fast for the conditions just plowed right into him because there was a dog in the road, and he's 20. So he wasn't a little kid, and he's also he's also a firefighter, so he drives very, very carefully. But people, the problem is that for whatever reason they're not abiding by the laws, and so yes, it is a personal responsibility.
Right.
Sure, but I don't want to just say, hey, it's your personal responsibility, but don't run into me. We've got to have we have to have the awareness of what the rules are and how we enforce them. We also had a Mandarin town hall about a year ago, Chief. Maybe it's time to do that again, because what we heard at that time was that there were a lot of people who didn't realize that they needed to get a new driver's license right away. Who were thinking that they could drive for 6 months on an international driver's license. And I just focus on the Chinese community because they're the largest recently, but maybe there's other outreach that we can do for people who are driving on international licenses and maybe not familiar.
Yeah.
Referring to the one we hosted at the South Coast.
Yeah, that was very successful.
We do that about once annually, and so it's we're actually in the final stages of having another town hall meeting at the South Coast Chinese Focus Center.
Wonderful, thank you. And maybe there's another group. I don't know what. We have so many different languages in our city.
We're trying to find out what the primary languages are, so that way we can reach out to those languages. I know Chinese and Korean are the main ones, but there's also different Indian languages as well, and Persian. And there's a big Russian community. I mean, there's a lot. So we want to be able to find out where we can serve them.
Maybe we could partner with the school district.
Yeah,
The school district has excellent programs in different languages, so we could start with sending translated literature and not just on the door hangers, be easier to deliver to the school. I thought your point about giving it to the principal and having them disseminate it was great.
From the principal.
Yeah, that was great, great
Yeah.
input. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I always wondered about this. And other cities do this too. When you're bringing it like a DOI checkpoint, how is it that it's announced in the paper where that's going to be? You know, obviously we're going to
They'll avoid that street.
Yeah, state law requires us to publish it.
What's the reason? Just
We could withhold the location. We don't have to say the exact location. We do have to publish the fact that there is going to be a DUI checkpoint and on which day. We could withhold the information. I think our perspective is similar to the HVEs. We will put out oftentimes the day before, hey, there's going to be an HVE tomorrow. It's not, we're never trying to play gotcha. With HVEs especially, DUI checkpoints, that's a little different. If you happen to come through a checkpoint, you're under the influence. Absolutely, we're going to arrest you. But we want really more publicity that, hey, these checkpoints are taking place. They're out there. Sure, you know where this one is today, but maybe you missed the last press release for the other one. And so just to have an overall awareness that these are occurring. We do put the locations. Again, I think it's something that we can certainly look at and review and see if that's appropriate, but that's been our practice for some time. Yes.
So I have a question, a little bit about what Councilmember Fox was mentioning with the dynamic signage throughout, some spots in the city. And I worked at OCTA many years, and we have a wealth of transportation knowledge on our commission. But one item that I was wondering if you've had success with in the past, or if you know other cities that have had success, is light up reflectors at certain high capacity crosswalks, and if those tend to work well, because when that item comes back to us in 90 days, I really want to delve further into that. If there's certain kind of, well-tractioned crosswalks that are getting a lot of foot traffic, a lot of bicyclist traffic, maybe in or around the school areas as well as just around the community, that would benefit from the light up reflectors on those crosswalks, so that if it is kind of twilight and those kind of are an extra safety measure.
Yeah, I know traffic engineering is looking at that and evaluating that as a public safety agency. I'm not aware of other cities. I'm trying to think about coming across those.
Coast Highway, Laguna Beach.
Okay.
You have seen those?
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
I know
the
there's
general reaction is confusing to people.
Yeah.
However, it does bring something to your attention. Hey, look out, watch.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to take a hard look at that.
Just people look at it,
Right.
get some feedback,
Right.
see if it's, and also what
See if it
Councilmember
works.
Fox was saying about some of the dynamic signage,
Right.
because I've seen that work in other cities, I've heard it, but I just don't have numbers. It's
Right.
been interesting to get statistics as far as if that's working.
Don't those work better at night though?
Right, at night.
There's the one from Sand Canyon parking across to the community center that I use regularly, but it's during the day.
Right.
And I don't think cars want to see it.
Yeah,
once you
I think
hit
at
that
night
parking
more
spot.
so.
That would be super helpful, because the visibility isn't great and the lighting sometimes is a little dim, especially around twilight and things.
Yes.
The one on the one on Michelson's very obvious and visible daylight. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
The one mid-block on Michelson between
Right by Wholesome
Sandberg-
Choice.
Sandberg and Culver.
That's right. I forgot about that one.
And that's push button activated. It'd be great for some of the bike
Yeah,
trail.
and that's very visible during the day.
It'd be really helpful for some of the bike trail crossings, because those are people dependent on crosswalks and motorists don't give much
Sure.
respect.
And similar, I think, to the protected permissive yellow left turn lanes that are.
Can you talk about that as well?
Terrified, I'm terrified for the state,
So-
God help us all.
Well, and so similar to those, and I'll talk about that in just a second, and I'll get to your guys' questions. I'm sorry, guys. I see your hands up. It's similar to those flashing left turn arrows. You don't necessarily know what the response is going to be. So when you suddenly have the whole crosswalk light up and flash at you, some drivers absolutely get confused. But so it's definitely something to consider. I know traffic engineering is the experts on that. Yeah, so the protected permissive left turn lanes, for those of you who haven't heard of those, there they are, and actually I believe the city's Facebook page has some information. But those are going to be, so when you're approaching an intersection, you're in the left turn lane. Traditionally in Irvine, all you will see is a red light, a solid yellow light, which we all know what that means, or a solid green arrow, which we all know what that means as well. What you're going to start seeing, in fact, 2 intersections should already be live, Tesla and Irvine Center Drive, as well as Rockfield and Oldfield, both of those in the east end of the city. You'll see when you're coming off the minor streets, they're not going to be on the major streets, just the minor streets, the smaller side streets, coming out of shopping centers, that kind of thing.
Like Tesla.
Like Tesla, instead of Irvine Center Drive being the major street. Tesla, when you're coming out into the left turn lane, you may see a flashing yellow arrow. And what that means is that opposing traffic coming at you have a green light. So you need to be cautious. You need to yield to those cars coming in your direction. And then once it's clear to go, you can go ahead and make that left turn. But the flashing yellow is really there to get vehicles to move through the intersection faster and hopefully relieve some congestion in the areas. So locally, you're going to see that in the next week to 2 weeks at Sand Canyon and Towngate. It'll be on Towngate.
It's double though. Even in LA, when you have the left turns, I've never seen double left, so that's concerning.
Yeah, it'll be on Towngate. It won't be on Sand Canyon. Again, on the minor streets coming out of the shopping centers and neighborhoods. So on Towngate, you will see a flash. You may see a flashing yellow if you catch it, and that just means cars coming at you have a green light. If you see a solid green arrow, that means you have the right of way and you can proceed through just like a normal green arrow. If you have a solid red arrow, obviously that means to stop. But if you see the flashing arrow, you just got to be aware that traffic coming towards you, if they're going to proceed straight through the intersection, you need to yield to those arrows. So you'll see that at Sand Canyon and Towngate, you'll see that at Florence and Colbert as well. And then Odyssey and
Indicate that in other languages as well, and what yield means, what you're supposed to do, what yield means for pedestrians, what yield means for vehicles at four-way stops, what yield means for that, because I don't think that's in a lot of people's vocabulary.
And I know the city's PIO is working on a lot of that.
Great.
She does a great job as well. I know she's working on communicating those messages. Let me have this group. You guys have been patient. Sir, right here.
And we're running short on time.
Yeah.
So we kind of want to bring back the HPD conversation.
Sure.
The high visibility enforcement.
Sure.
That you guys have been doing in Irvine and Tustin. And we realized that you have listed that on your Facebook page. So all of us in one way, shape, or form have been targeted in this kind of, and I'm referring to like delayed exhaust violations for modified cars.
Sure.
So it's happening and,
How are you guys kind of treating the like new exhaust? Like, what are like kind of measures to kind of initiate the pullover depending on the sound?
Sure. Well, all of our officers, especially in the traffic bureau, have been through a training on modified exhaust and recognizing modified exhaust systems. They've all been through training on that, and that was actually done just about a month ago. Most of our officers have been through that for a long time. There was just a handful that hadn't gone through that class. So we have some in-house people that will do those kinds of trainings. But when it comes to recognizing modified exhaust, is that really the question that you're asking?
It's one of the questions, mainly because I've lived in Irvine probably since 2005. I actually lived down the street.
Sure.
I'm actually, in the industry of automotive.
Yeah.
And for all the time I've lived in Irvine, we've had a great relationship with the police. We actually have a car meet, off of Jeffrey, that police actually stop by every now and then and see what's up. Ask us some questions about some things that have been happening around there.
Yeah. Is that Jeffrey and Walnut or which? Yeah. Okay.
And then I guess recently, I actually worked in Laguna Hills.
Yeah.
So I was actually in Laguna Hills when I was pulled over by an IPD detective.
Okay.
And apparently that was showing that high visibility night.
Yeah.
And previously, before I was even pulled over, I was at another establishment, and I was actually warned. And then someone was saying the cops are here, they're gonna pull over anything anything out. And I was like, you know what? I'm not worried about it. My car's totally legal. I do have a modified exhaust, but it does have all the silencers and baffles in it.
Okay.
And I was just right around the corner from work. And I was actually pulled over just kind of going back to work. I was pulled over on the fact that they said my exhaust was loud, but I did not receive a citation.
Okay, good. Did he do an inspection on your vehicle?
He did.
Okay. So based on his training, when he did his inspection, he didn't find anything modified, and so he let you go, right?
Actually, I do have to go through a ride.
What's that?
I do have to go to state referee, just to prove that things in the end of the day were.
So he's saying you do a state referee?
Because he didn't know he was doing it.
Okay.
He just goes, oh, well, I don't know, but I want to go see your guy.
Yeah. Well, so it's difficult for me to speak to a particular situation that I haven't been there, right? But so when it comes to stopping any vehicle, we need reasonable suspicion to make the car stop, right? And so reasonable suspicion is not enough to convict. It's not enough to say you're 100% guilty, but it is enough to say, I'm pretty sure there's an issue there, or I believe strongly that there's an issue, and I'm going to investigate further. So if somebody sees you driving by, and based on their level of training and experience, and I'll be honest, there's all sorts of levels of training and experience within our department on traffic issues. Some are experts on modified exhaust. Others have been through training, but maybe they don't have the practical experience, or maybe they don't know specifically about your vehicle. So when they see it, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but when they see it, they're going to say, "Hey, this is a big concern for the Irvine community." Believe it or not, it is, and it's one of the complaints that we get on a regular basis is loud vehicles driving on the streets. And don't get me wrong, I know there's a whole component of the community that probably loves these cars. And again, as we talked about earlier with your question, it's a balance of, hey, we gotta respect this group, we gotta respect this group. Your group being one of them, if you guys enjoy that kind of thing, or that's part of your hobby, or whatever the case may be, then it's a balance between trying to meet the needs of all sides. And so we look for violations, and if state law says it's illegal, then we're going to enforce those laws. But if after reviewing your vehicle, if he doesn't see anything wrong,
It's just
then
that
it's
it does
what it
take
is.
a lot of time out because
I get it.
we have to miss a day of work.
I get it.
My picture is actually on the Facebook page, which is kind of concerning because I am a business owner.
Okay.
And I've actually had a lot of customers, like, asking me about, the issues going on. They're like, hey, should I do certain things on, that's within the law? We know how to, we're very responsible on the modifications of the car.
So how about this? You sound like a very upstanding person in the community. I'd be more than happy to have a further conversation with you, maybe offline after the meeting.
That would be great.
And we could discuss this further and maybe come to some sort of agreement where you can come and talk to me about it, provide me with some education and training on it, and then we'll see where it goes from there. That sound okay?
I also wanted to say, after that high visibility enforcement, which include a lot of car modifications, I spoke directly with our chief of police, Mike Hamel, and we're going to meet, the two of us are going to meet, and then I'm going to understand the problem or the issue in the community better, and we are going to do some outreach to the modification community so that we can understand and make sure that we're not going after people who are just enjoying their cars, and that we're looking at actual problems that we're having in the city. So,
And that's the point, because we're all over 30 here, we're not street racers, we don't.
yeah.
But
we share a hobby, and we
Now-
all abide by the law, and we're being profiled.
I believe we have something to offer that will actually help you solve your problem, because it's greater than just the fact that you have people that are running around with parts on the car.
Right, well, and can I say that the chief was immediately receptive to me. We spoke, I took him out of whatever he was doing Saturday morning. We spent a good half an hour on the phone, and we talked about how we were going to better serve our community and get to the issues that are street racing, things that are of concern. And that's what's happened, and not necessarily a modification that's within the law. Am I misspeaking? And please, chief, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but I mean, this is something that we're going to take a look at, right?
Sure. So thank you for the opportunity. I'll just echo what Lieutenant Turner said, is that our intent is never to profile anybody, and our intent is to enforce the law in a respectful way, in a balanced way. And so the HVE that I think you referred to, that one night that we posted on social media, we were responding based on some very strong intelligence information that people associated with that particular car club or group had members who were in fact engaging in street racing. Now that is to say, not everyone of course, but what we know is that this particular Instagram group that was posting online about where to meet and changing locations and showing parking lots, people in that group have been known to street race. And we have very strong intelligence information about that. So one of the ways in which we enforce and try to combat that kind of activity, which is very dangerous, and we get complaints about it all the time, is by focusing on modifications to vehicles as a way to show that we're focusing our efforts on a group that we know who has members that are involved in street racing. And we feel very strongly about that.
We support you doing that, 100%. I don't think that belongs on the street at all. Most of us are actually involved in motorsports, so we take it to the track, first of all. So I think that's something that we can help you communicate to those that are out there that have the same passion or similar passion to what we share. And, I think we would like you to leverage our knowledge and our abilities to go ahead and do that.
And that's
That would
exactly
be-
what we
that would
talked
be
about.
outstanding, because I would love to work, and in fact, as Councilmember Fox stated, she approached me about some kind of opportunity to collaborate. And so 100%, our primary goal is to keep our streets safe and keep this community safe. And if we can partner and we can do that together, because ultimately I think that you want the same thing. You want our roads to be safe as well. And so if we can collaborate, that'd be outstanding.
And make sure that people who are innocently enjoying a passion for cars are not getting a bad reputation or caught up in the enforcement.
That's exactly what happened.
That's exactly what it is, differentiated between
Yeah.
the ones that are counted,
Yeah.
also the ones that are.
It's like a shepherd killing every dog thinking one might be a wolf.
Right, no, so we're
not
No.
out breaking the law.
and we're specifically going to be working with the community and doing outreach so that we're more informed and so that you can help us. Chief will help. Chief will help. Yeah, that's my dog. So that you can help us get the people who are endangering our streets. Yeah.
And there's multiple levels to this issue, and I think you guys know that. I know we know that. There's the street racers that will be within your group, although probably a small minority. But then there's other issues that I would love to talk to you guys more about. Maybe we got some more. When? I'll give you my card. Right now, right today. At least we can start the conversation today, but probably pick another day to continue that conversation. In the very back.
Yeah, I have a really quick question.
Sure.
You mentioned earlier, you have a training that for your officers to specifically spot modified exhausts. What is the threshold for them to want to pull over the car? In other words, if it's just modified, even if it's just a visual, let's say exhaust kit or a blow over, they're just going to pull over? Or there's got to be a threshold before they decide that.
Sure. Like I said, if based on their training experience, they believe they have a reasonable suspicion to make a vehicle stop, a reasonable suspicion to believe that you have modified your vehicle illegally, that's the threshold. So what does that mean? Is there specific parameters that say, oh, you got to have A, B, and C in order to make that vehicle stop? Not necessarily, no. It's the same as if I was driving past you and you're in the carpool lane and your passenger has a seat reclined, and I'm driving by and I'm thinking, okay, is there somebody else in that car? Is there not somebody else in that car? I have to look at the totality of the circumstances before I can make a decision and say, okay, I think I have a reason to believe that you're a single occupant of that vehicle. Now, I might be wrong. Maybe you have a child in the back seat that I can't see, right? Maybe there's some other factor going on, so I might be wrong. We can't say that in every traffic stop we're right. However, we do our best, absolutely. I mean, every single officer, and I can speak for every single officer in the traffic bureau, is there for the right reasons. They're not there to target you, to go attack any of you, other than to make our streets safer. That is legitimately why they're there. And if you guys have the same motivation, then absolutely we could partner together to make that work.
Yeah, because it seems like if you see a guy driving really fast, or taking a corner fast, or doing reckless things, and you can go, oh, well, he has this, because you can do those things in a stock car. They don't need to be modified.
Sure.
They can drive like a jerk.
Well, if somebody's driving reckless, then there's a different reason for a stop.
So then, there's suspicion right there. Like the guys I saw, I heard noises, and there's only car around. This guy comes around the corner fast. Let's stop him. Versus, oh, there's a car with a shiny tip. Oh, he's doing the speed limit. Oh, he has signals on. His lights are on. His dust. He's responding. Let's give him a ticket because
I don't believe the shiny tip is a reason that any officer would use to pull somebody over.
Because local businesses lose money when these kind of things happen, and you see these huge stoppages where people are getting tickets going like, yeah, I was going back to the office from getting dinner, or I was going here because they thought I was part of this group. But if you're part of you're not that part of the group. But it's like, now people are like, well, I live in this area, I gotta cancel my orders. I have to not buy these things from this local business because I might get targeted or be seen as one of those people. And that's
Here's the thing. When you say we believe somebody's part of a group or not, I think if a group of people who are known to have some are known to have illegal modifications in an area, then we're not saying, okay, we're waiting for somebody from that group to leave. We're looking at any vehicle that's in the area, and we want to make sure that people are within the law. Again, that's the key. It's just being within the law. And it sounds like there's ways that you guys are doing that. And maybe appearances to some outsiders don't realize that you're doing that. But again, that's conversations that we can have. And I'll pass it off to Officer Cameron quick. I think he wants to say something.
Hi. So I'm one of the officers who are training for modified emissions, just like all of you guys in the back row there. I'm also a car enthusiast, okay? I can speak to you about Hondas all day long and Euro cars, okay? So I get it, I totally understand.
Hold the mic to your mouth.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Do I need to repeat myself again, or?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. I am a car enthusiast, just like all of you. Like I said earlier, I can speak about Hondas all day long. I can speak about Euro cars all day long too. Okay, I appreciate cars. But just because you have an exhaust doesn't mean you're gonna get pulled over. I can speak for me personally when I see a modified car. If the person is respectful and driving responsibly, 99% of the time I'm not gonna stop that person. However, if that person who is obnoxiously revving their engines, and you know what I'm talking about, right? And if they don't have a cat, and you know they don't have a cat because the rear bumper is all black and all stuff, right? More than likely, I'm going to stop that person. Okay? The California Vehicle Code has hundreds and thousands of sections for us to use to pull over a car in the desert. Doesn't have to be the exhaust. The car's too lower or 22 inches, it can be pulled over as well. Okay? Any questions that I can help?
I actually had there are reports of people who have posted to YouTube and other social media platforms who have 100% stock unmodified cars who have gotten pulled over and now have to see a paper free. These are like a Chevy Camaro SS with a better engine, a Chevy Corvette. A Nissan Z cars. These cars are very good. They're designed for the enthusiast, and they will be louder. And it comes back to that threshold of, education, the enforcement. So that's, I want to bring that to your attention, that, it's about education on both sides of the fence.
I haven't stopped any stock cars like a Chevy Camaro or a stock Lamborghini because those are all loud. Okay, I will stop them based on their driving behavior. At the end of the day, just like all of us here in the room, I think it's all about safety.
Well, that's good to hear, because that's reassuring, because I think everybody is here. When we do have those kind of functions where people show up, we don't let people come to like, we're going to street race. People show up and they're ready and stuff, we tell them they're not wanted there, because we know we have the vendors and parks nearby, or there's condos or homes or that business.
I also found a business to sponsor a meetup. So we're looking for a location, but I believe it's going to be on the other side of the park at the new 5 Point headquarters. They are interested in sponsoring a meetup, and they'll help with having bathrooms open and coffee so that we can make a nice event.
That's nice.
They're looking to do that.
Sounds like a Carson coffee.
Yeah, because I know that we had a history of really good cars and coffee that a lot of people enjoyed.
Well,
So,
really good club, condo next to, and the condo people complain that it shuts down.
yeah, but this is in a non-residential area. Yeah, non-residential. Yeah. And also, the high visibility enforcement was also, I would point out, a joint operation. And so we can only speak for the Irvine Police Department. There might have been other behaviors by other public safety units, which we can't speak to. But we have a good policy here that we're working with you on.
For the specific incident that happened to our colleague and friend here, John, it was without a doubt IP.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think was extremely regrettable was not just the fact that it happened, but how it was publicized. Because when it was publicized, he was basically, I would almost call it borderline slander. He was being thrown in with street racers when all he was doing was getting pizza a block away from his workplace of work, which, is according to motorsports and according to garage in Lake Forest, or I'm sorry, Laguna Hills. And so he had nothing to do with it. I was a passenger, and I felt like it was a waste of our time. I felt like it was a waste of your time too, because you didn't need to grab us.
Well, you now have the majority of the Transportation Commission from the city of Irvine. You have our police chief, you have our lieutenant, in charge of enforcement. You have our officers here who are working directly in the community, and we're here to hear you and to work with you, because this city cares.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And our school board members in the back, and committee members. So this is a very important topic, and I don't want to make. We've been focusing on safety because we've had some people injured, but this is overall an issue of community outreach and working with our community. So I'm so glad. I know we saw all this outpouring on Facebook, and I was so glad we had this town hall scheduled, and I'm so glad that you guys took the time to come so that we can work together as a community to stop the dangerous 3 o'clock in the morning street racing where they're turning our streets into racetracks. And we don't want to be, using police resources on shiny tips, right?
Of course,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm sure there's other things you
Yeah,
guys.
absolutely.
We're already doing anyways.
Well, like the councilmember said, it is a big issue for the community. Not only have we had injuries, we have had deaths recently, as recently as 6 or 7 months ago.
Street racing?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Did
that's
you kill somebody, or did they die, the person that was street racing?
somebody else was hurt.
We
So-
killed the older woman, right?
Yeah, she was
Was this
actually.
during like the daytime or the middle of the night? What type of time frame does this kind of stuff happen?
It was afternoon hours. I can't get into a lot of details of that particular case because it is still being investigated. It's getting close to being wrapped up.
Alarming.
But it is a concern. It's a concern for our community. It's a concern for us.
Yeah, but also-
And any effort we can make to stop that from occurring, we're gonna take. However, like you said, we don't want to kill all the dogs
Yeah,
in the
of course,
group.
yes.
And we want to work with you. So I appreciate the 6 of you for coming out.
It's a concern for us that he organizes events for different types of cars to do like racing at the track only. We deter people from, driving that way on the street.
Good. I appreciate it.
Because we know that people want to do those things, and a lot of people don't know where to do those things.
Sure.
So, there's multiple events that are handled throughout the season, throughout the whole year, not just during the summertime, because, the weather's always good most of the time. But, we have these events that keep people off of doing that, because all it does is it makes us all look bad. It makes us all feel that we're going to be targeted.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we see an issue, like when stuff was happening in Hollywood, people shooting flares at the cops, and these massive takeovers. None of us participate in this kind of thing, because, you don't poop where you eat,
I'll give you.
I mean, that's a nice way of putting it. That's what it is. It's like, if you live here, you don't want to consider that.
I'll give you
She
my.
heard poop and he's all happy.
I'll give you my business cards.
Yeah, I
And
got my cards.
let's start a conversation, okay? So I appreciate that. Yes, sir.
I don't know if you're good, but this meeting was originally about traffic safety, and so I'm hoping we can kind of get it back to that topic, and then perhaps we could offline just do another meeting just to chat.
We kind of saved ourselves for the end, so that way we can.
Sure, we've got a whole series of issues we've never even touched on, and so, we'll
Sure.
take it to the traffic commission, but, the
What are
traffic
the-
safety is really a big concern of ours.
What other questions do we have?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Actually. So I live in a gated community right next to Canyon View Elementary.
Yes.
And so a lot of people will come to drop off their kids. They'll come through the gates. People who don't live there will be like street parking up the whole neighborhood and walking their kids. And I'm leaving for work at that time. And as a driver, it concerns me because a lot of them aren't acting as good pedestrians. Some people are just not paying attention.
So that area, and I apologize if I didn't mean to cut you off, but that area is certainly under a lot of scrutiny by our traffic engineering department. I know the school district has been involved with us, and we've reached out to them, and all of us are working together to make that area safer. Traffic engineering is looking at a variety of ways to improve crossing, because he was concerned about a lot of the street parking around Canyon View Elementary, and then the unsafe crossing of the streets in various areas. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So I know it's a collaborative effort, to say the least, between us, the schools, and traffic engineering, and it's a work in progress. And we are definitely aware of that area, and we're trying to make it better. I don't know if we'll ever stop the street parking, because I think that's the nature of being by a school.
Sure.
But certainly the safe crossing is a priority.
Just to add to that, a lot of the people that don't get the parking permits in Northwood park over there, the kids that have the, so that's where,
So that's been a
you gotta
concern.
probably talk to the principal about that too.
Yeah, and that's part of, I would say, the concern with opening up various parking areas in that particular neighborhood. Is the concern is that some Northwood kids might try to park down the street. So it's a balance. It's certainly a balance. In fact, I just had that conversation this last week, we're still working on it. We're still working on a solution. Yes, ma'am.
So just in response to the item that we talked about before, which is coming back to our commission in about 90 days, I would urge maybe you could keep my card and I can let you know when that's coming back. But that was one of the items we discussed, because at Vista Verde, and it's not just Vista Verde K-8, other schools throughout the community, they're double and triple parking sometimes, picking up and drop off. So we're really trying, that's why we asked that the whole city, all the schools be looked at as far as particularly the drop off and pickup and the traffic issues in and around those school, areas.
People entering in the wrong way, like there'll be an entrance and an exit, and people entering in the exit, or there'll be two cars there and somebody squeezes in between, nearly hitting pedestrians because they don't have visibility from the larger vehicle next to them.
I know Officer Predney has focused a lot on Canyon View. You may have even seen him in the area. I don't know if you've seen a very tall motorcycle officer who makes the bike look very small. But he's been in the area quite a bit, focusing on that. And then other officers, as I mentioned earlier, are being assigned to schools and have been assigned to schools, and that's certainly well. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, the new 65-mile-an-hour Irvine Boulevard adjacent to a Class 2 bike lane. I understand the theory that if you post at 65, you can finally cite people for speeding, because otherwise you depend on this ridiculous rule of if 85% of people are speeding, that's the new limit. So I appreciate that we've gone to the 65, but it seems a little bit wild. And I guess what I'm asking is, have we been able to do more enforcement in terms of citing people for going 80 on that 65 zone than we did before when it was 50, but we couldn't cite them?
Officer Kim, I don't know if you have an answer to that question. Sorry to put you on the spot, but as far as have you been able to cite more with that 65 mile per hour posted speed?
I believe other officers have, not me personally. I've been more in Woodbury.
Because as a cyclist sharing the road in Irvine, our roads are in such great condition. They're so generously wide that people drive. So the average speed of driving in Irvine is going to be a lot higher than most places. And so setting speed limits that high, I got rear-ended at 20 or so and I got a broken elbow. You get rear-ended at 40 and you're likely to die.
So,
and the people that are going down Irvine Center driving Culver at 70 miles an hour in freeway speeds, and because it's a beautiful wide 6-lane road, but they're in the right lane adjacent to the bike lanes. And if we have a bike lane on the road, it seems really bizarre that we let people go that fast.
So the chief a few weeks ago coordinated a traffic safety working group in the city, and I'm a part of that group. It's public safety, public works, traffic engineering, and community development are all meeting together. And we're meeting every couple of weeks, and we're doing so to look for creative solutions, communication, as well as engineering, enforcement, etc. And this topic of speed limits did come up in that. And you're right when you cited the California law with the speed surveys and those issues. And I can't speak incredibly intelligently about speed surveys, unfortunately. But there is limitations to what traffic engineering can do. If it's on a major street and you do the speed survey, then you're somewhat at the mercy of the speed survey to a certain degree. So the 65, because one of the conversations was, well, can we slow down traffic a little bit without it impacting congestion? And that was part of the response.
We've done it as a city council, lowered speed limits. And I know that we run into an enforcement problem, but sometimes we've said, we just need to get people moving slower on these streets. It's unsafe.
Traffic calming, the circles, once you figure out how to do them, they really do make the traffic flow better at a slower, less deadly speed.
Yeah, yes.
And that's something that we're looking at on Jamboree. At least I should say. That's something that I'm looking at on Jamboree and talking with business owners about in the IBC is traffic calming in that area so that it doesn't become, it already is a throughway. So now that Von Carmen is getting faster and because it's connecting now, and as we're building out more high intensity uses in that corridor, talking about some traffic calming so that it doesn't become just a freeway.
It'll be gridlock soon, so
but it's good for residents and it's good for businesses in the area, and it creates more of a neighborhood feel. It allows for more walking and biking. So that's something that we're going to be looking at. And frankly, when we have to look at the cap for IBC, we're going to have to relook at some planning over there too. And traffic calming is going to be a big push for me.
Did you have something to say on that?
I just wanted to comment on what Councilmember Fox said initially at the beginning of that, is that you're absolutely right. We did the same thing in our commission when that every year it comes before us with the speed limits. and it's in sections throughout the city, and we did what we could. We literally pulled what we could and asked for the most, lowest speed limit possible, but then our hands were tied by state law. So I feel for the council, because then from us it goes to the council, and so we did what we could by anything that we could get to the lowest, possibility we did, and then we tried to go lower, and we were told by IPD and staff that, we are confined by state law, so eventually maybe if that code section is looked at, in the future, but right now we're doing what we can as the council.
It came in front of us just after 2 pedestrians died,
Yeah.
which made it, kind of a no-brainer to be able to do.
Yes, sir.
I know speeding is an issue, but like one of the best parts about driving around Irvine is that speed limit is 50 in most places and not 35. But the biggest problem I think is more, it causes more traffic, is that you see people doing 35 and 55s and 60s, and then you look over and the guy's doing 37, and you got 3 or 2-year lanes that aren't going anywhere because people are driving, at night with their lights off, doing 35 instead of 50, and it just seems that people are trying to get on the program. Do you guys give people tickets for doing 35 and 50s?
No, it's a maximum, not a minimum.
Yeah, I see it all the time, and that causes a lot of traffic.
It does, because our lights are timed.
The traffic's gonna be there whether they're going fast or slow. It's the same number of cars, but it's a limit.
Well,
The speed limit's
let's
supposed
let
to be.
Officer Cameron respond to that.
Oh, and before we finish that, we have to open Tomato Springs Park
In
at
half an
3:30.
hour, yeah.
So we do have to cut it off at 3:30, although we will have other people around. So if we could,
Sure.
I don't want to cut it off prematurely, but if we could, just after 3:30,
Sure.
we all have to get over to another opening.
Okay, so just like speeding, driving too slow is also illegal. It's called impeding traffic.
Yeah.
California Code 22-400.
That's if you have 5 people behind you.
What's that?
I thought sorry to interrupt, but I thought impeding traffic was if you got 5 or more behind
That's
you,
what
you need
I'm
to
talking
pull
about.
over.
He's correct.
That's what I'm talking
He's
about.
correct.
But to suggest that impeding
I'm not
traffic.
talking about 5. Okay. So
If I'm on the freeway, I understand. There's
no number, okay? So if I'm driving behind a person in a 50-mile-per-hour zone, okay? The person who's driving less than 50, I would say 30, 20 to 25 miles per hour, that's impeding traffic, okay? There's no other way for me to get out and go around. Or likely I'm gonna stop that person, and I will issue a citation for that. So to answer your question, yes, we do issue citations if you're driving too slow for no reason.
Again, I think just two sides of the issue. There's some that want slower speeds, and there's some that appreciate the higher speeds, and it's a balance. It's always a balance game between getting, meeting the needs of everybody. So I appreciate you pointing that out, though. It sounds like a comment I had on a Facebook post this week, actually. That was almost word for word what you said. Probably, I'm sure it was a coincidence. Was it?
Because I see it on one side, and people are speaking the other side.
Yeah.
I think it's about the middle ground, but
Absolutely.
it's like people are so quick to give up a lot of freedom just to pretend to say that.
I hear you.
One thing that's being done in this
Sure.
city that's really good is all the lights are being synchronized, so traffic is like going through a lot better.
Yeah, we see that.
Yeah, so it's
I think we have time maybe for one more question. If we finish it up with one last question,
Well, the post,
we can flip a coin to see who gets the question. If there's multiple, I don't know.
the posted speed limits can kind of be confusing. I never drive on Culver for that reason. I feel like it's a trap to get a speeding ticket.
Well, they changed, right? They changed.
Go, it was like 35, 45, 50, now back to 45, now 40, it's like, there's only 5 lights, why did it change different?
So it comes back to Google speed surveys in California law and read about it, because it comes back to that. There's a part of Harvard where it intersects with Culver. The speed limit is 35. The rest of Harvard is at 35. Am I correct in that one? You know what I'm talking about? The rest of Harvard is much faster, and then there's just one little strip that's 35. And again, there's no speed traps. There's nobody. We're not doing gotcha. We're not. I promise you. But there are some parts where you gotta be paying attention for sure. But it comes back to California law and just how our traffic engineering department does their speed surveys and what the results of those speed surveys are.
And congratulations on capturing the burglar that
Yeah,
just
that was
came
great.
up. Yes, thank you.
That was great.
and the detective and the entire department that worked on the armed robber in multiple jurisdictions. That was Irvine's Forensics that found them. So congratulations on that too. So we don't think we know that you guys are doing a lot of great stuff.
And what you see in traffic is just a small portion of the department. The rest of the department is doing some outstanding stuff as well. So thank you all for your.
Can we thank the officers coming out tonight? Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you.